Hey, welcome to POSTSCRIPT from DNR Media, the podcast channel for the Daily News Record here in Harrisonburg. I'm Shane Metlin, sitting here in the DNR newsroom again with Lori Angelo. And this is the podcast where we talk a little bit about a story that's run in the paper and on dnronline.com, and dig in a little bit about, the reporting process, how it came to be, and maybe how things change as we began to look into a particular story about our community. Lori, today we're going to talk about one you wrote recently that started out being one of those ones where, a local theater troupe group is getting ready to start their season. It's probably going to be the same thing that happens every year, and it ended up being like much different this time around than maybe you were expecting when you first made the calls.
Yes, that's true. So each Friday between like January and May, the paper does like a special section of the paper that focuses on different areas of the community. And so I was looking for a story to write about Broadway for our hometown section on Broadway. And so I found out that the Off-Broadway Players was like getting ready for their new season. And the Off-Broadway Players is a Broadway-based community theater group. And so that was like originally what I was going to write about. It was just a preview for the plays in their upcoming season.
Yeah, and so they were going to do Tuesdays with Maury, which is a story if people aren't familiar with that. Mitch Albom was a fellow journalist, a longtime sports writer and everything, wrote this book about his mentor and his time with him as he suffered with ALS, and they were going to do a stage production of that, right?
Yeah, so their season is usually, I believe it's usually 4 shows, and so the first show was going to be Tuesdays with Maury, and it's based on Professor Maury Swartz, like basically giving like life lessons to Mitch Albom when Maury after he is diagnosed with ALS, and so Mitch goes and sees him like every Tuesday, and then they like talk about different things.
Yeah, and so that was the story they were going to do. This also kind of, I guess, cross paths with another story that we've run in the paper. We talked about on this podcast too, with a couple other reporters, was the Court Square Theater and kind of the drama and the back and forth with the downtown theater venue in Harrisonburg, where it was going to close. It did close, I think, briefly, was reopened, everything, but that threw them kind of in the lurch as they tried to figure out where they were going to put on their play, correct?
Yeah, so normally the Off-Broadway Players does their plays at the middle school auditorium in Broadway, but like because of other scheduling, like normally they do like 3 out of the 4 plays of the season there, and so one of the shows is like a touring show. So originally Tuesdays with Maury was going to be at Court Square Theater and the Stipe Center. So it's going to be at Court Square Theater the first week and the Stipe Center the second week. But then when they heard that Court Square Theater was closing, they weren't sure if they're going to be able to do it anymore, and so they were trying to like look into other venues. And eventually they found out that Court Square Theater is going to be open, but they ended up deciding to do it at the middle school on Broadway anyways, because they found out that Tim Turner, who coached baseball for Broadway, like he started coaching Little League, and then he eventually did JV and varsity baseball for a long time, like more than 20 years. He coached the different types of baseball, like when his kids were in school and stuff. And so they found out that he had ALS, which is the same disease that Maury has, and then they decided the first weekend, which is March 20th through 22nd, would be a benefit for Tim Turner.
Yeah, so now we're getting into kind of the reason we chose this story to talk about today, because it ended up not being the original story you set out to write. When you find out new information, and obviously somebody who's pretty beloved in the Broadway community, worked with so many people and kids and helped shape lives, and is obviously suffering through something, really, really tragic at this point in his life. And to see now that community that he was a part of rally around him in this way, it kind of just changed the entire direction of what you wanted to do.
Yeah, so what had happened was the Off-Broadway Players found out about Tim Turner having ALS like right around the same time I was setting up the interview. So at first they were like, we should know if it's going to still be at Court Square Theater. And then I was like, oh, is it going to still be there? And they're like, no, because like this whole thing happened. So like between the time I initially contacted them and then when I did the interview with them, then I found out that they had moved it and the first weekend would be a benefit performance. So when I interviewed them, I asked them like all kinds of other questions about like the history of the off-Broadway players, which originally like started in Newmarket, and a lot of that I just ended up not using because I ended up deciding to focus more on the fact that like not just the off-Broadway players, but some other businesses like Saddle Up, which is like a local coffee trailer. They were doing an energy drink that was benefiting Tim Turner, and like Gobbler Sports Network, which covers Broadway sports. Gobbler Sports Network.
Yeah.
And they also were doing a benefit for Tim Turner. So even though the story does mention Tuesdays with Morrie and like how to get tickets for it and everything, which is on the website of the off-Broadway players. But I also just ended up more focusing on like Tim Turner and his story also with being diagnosed with ALS.
Yeah, and you've talked to Tim and I think some of his family and things like. What was his kind of reaction or response when something that was maybe not about him to begin with took this turn and people kind of rallied around him?
Well, I mean, so I talked to his wife, Robin, and then I talked to Tim. And I think that, I mean, I don't know that they really knew that originally I was going to focus more on the season, but I think that they were grateful that the community was stepping out to support them because when you have like a degenerative disease like ALS, it can be really expensive. So Tim was like a longtime salesman and he had to retire because of the ALS diagnosis. And his wife also ended up leaving her job as well to care for him. So there's just a lot of things that you need to do with ALS, like be able to get care, but also make renovations to your home to make it accessible and get like a wheelchair. And just also as it progresses, you need different equipment and most of that equipment is really expensive. So I think that they're just really grateful that the community is stepping up to help them because especially like a degenerative disease, it can be really hard to manage all of your needs on your own. And so the fact that the community is like supporting them, I think is really helpful.
Yeah. What did the people from the off-Broadway players, how they enjoy the story and the way things went that way?
Well, I think that they shared it and were glad that what they're doing to help someone in the community was being like with the word was getting out because the off-Broadway players are like trying to reach out and like help someone in the community. And it is a community theater, so like it's a group of volunteers, like people who really love theater, who are like trying to help someone in the community. So I think like they were happy that more people would know about it, and I think that the Turners were also happy because Robin had mentioned that she had seen a play and that it was really good. And I think that there may also be a possibility for like a Q&A after one of the performances, but I don't know the details of that. I think possibly like maybe on March 22nd, but we'll have to check back and see as it gets closer if that ends up happening. But I think it is good because people don't always know when someone in their community is affected. And like many people, I believe that the lady who is having the energy drink that Tim had coached like her child or something in baseball when her child was younger. So I mean, anyone who's like volunteered in the community for a long time usually ends up like kind of reaching a lot of people in the community. So I think people are wanting to help and they're glad to hear about it and be able to give back.
Yeah, and you touched on where I was going to go next is tell people now that it's not at Court Square, when and where they can go see this and where they can kind of take part in this community outreach.
So the play is 2 weekends, and of course they can see it either of those weekends. But the first weekend at J. Frank Hilliard Auditorium, which is the middle school and Broadway's auditorium, that weekend will be the benefit for Tim Turner, and so it's Friday, March 20th at 7:30, Saturday, March 21st at 7:30, and Sunday, March 22nd at 3. The following weekend, when the play is at the Stipe Center, it's not going to be a benefit, but people can still see the play. on March 27th, 28th, and 29th at 7:30, and 3. So the same times the following weekend. But they can get tickets on the website for the Off-Broadway Players, which is offbroadwayplayersva.org. They can also contribute to the fundraiser that Gobbler Sports Network is doing by going to the Gobbler Sports Network website, and there's a QR code that you can scan to donate, and I believe it goes to a Venmo account that then goes to Tim Turner, and then if I think that Saddle Up is still doing a specific energy drink that benefits Tim Turner, and that's in the Folks Run area, I believe. It's a coffee trailer in that area. So if they go there and buy that drink, then the proceeds will help also.
All right. Yeah. Well, anything else just about the story or about Tim Turner or the play itself that people need to know before we wrap this up?
Well, I think that a lot of people really enjoy the story. It's based on a book, and most people that have read it, the book, have cried or because I read it a number of years ago, and it is a good book, just talking about life lessons. And then I think that another thing the Turners just want people to know is for more people to be aware of the disease. I don't think they're really exactly clear or know why people get it, but a lot of times people within 2 to 5 years of the diagnosis, it ends up being terminal, so that more research is needed and more advocacy. And I think that they're wanting people to know about that, and hopefully kind of reach out and support them in their efforts.
Yeah, so you not only will contribute if you go see the benefit show, but even if you don't see the benefit show, you'll learn about the disease and stuff if you just watch or read Tuesdays with Maury, which is one of those stories that people just probably need to check out. So once again, you've been listening to Postscript from DNR Media, the podcast channel from the Daily News Record. So wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, any of those places, or watch it on YouTube, please just follow, subscribe. You'll get this. You'll also have the Purple and Bold JMU Sports Podcast coming through that channel, and probably more things coming from the DNR. So please do that and help us out. Anyway, thanks for checking us. Thanks for tuning in.